Ecology is basically defined as the scientific study of the relationships of the living organisms with each other and with the environment. Grass is being eaten by a small animal. That small animal is being eaten by a bigger animal, and that animal is further eaten by a larger predator. You cannot have multiple layers or levels in a food chain, because over there then the amount of energy that is available in the top layer will become less. Climax community means that over here various species will be present, but they are in stable condition. So what is the criteria for declaring any particular region as a biodiversity hotspot? See, a region must contain at least 1500 species of vascular plants. Hello aspirants, welcome to PW OnlyIAS. I am here Harpreet Singh with another lecture, or better to say the last lecture from the Physical Geography series. Now please remember, this is lecture number 13, which basically covers the two chapters of the biodiversity that are mentioned in your NCERT. This journey of the Physical Geography series which I have had with you has been very interesting, where we tried to, from the personal side also and along with my team, we try to give you the best. We try to explain you the concepts, we try to explain you through the dimensions of various handmade diagrams. This is the last lecture, please remember. We are restricting ourselves again to the NCERT level, though I have added certain new concepts here, which are mentioned in the old NCERTs. Not the new ones, the old NCERTs. So that is why this lecture might have certain new concepts which you do not see in the new NCERT. So please make sure that you note down each and every word that is mentioned over here. That is again very, very critical for your preparation. So let us begin with today's lecture. This is the UPSC Foundation courses, because this is a free series that is going for everybody, but many people want to enroll in the batches. So we have the Crash Course 2026, that is written prelims in English and in Hindi for 2,999. Along with it, we have the 2 years 2027 people who are aiming for 2027, a 2 years comprehensive course for prelims, mains and the interview, that is in Sankalp English, Sankalp Hindi and the Pinnacle. Now please remember this, something very, very important for you. This Pinnacle batch is a batch that is purely in English, 100% English. The teacher is not going to talk in Hindi, nor is he or her going to write anything in Hindi. It's completely in English, especially for the people who want to prepare completely in English. It is again 13,499. Now this is the Praram, which is in English and Hindi for college students for 31,999. Okay, now let's begin. This is my QR code where you can find the various PDFs associated with the geography, Indian geography as well as the world physical geography. Along with it, anthropology optional as well as civil services preparation in general. You can also connect me on my Instagram account. This is my Instagram account. You can connect me on this also. Let's begin today's lecture. Now please remember, the very important concept that comes here is ecology, something that we keep on reading. But what ecology is? See here. Please remember, you can keep on noting it down. Ecology is basically defined as the scientific study of the relationships of the living organisms with each other and with the environment. First of all, remember, whenever the word logy comes behind anything, it is basically study. So it is a study of the, very important, scientific study of the relationship of the living organisms along with its environment. Now, living organism is interacting with each other, yes, along with its environment. Now, environment can have a lot of living as well as non-living components also. So it is a study of that, right? Now, it was coined by a very important person, Ernest Haeckel. Now, this question has been asked in the preliminary examination as well as UPSC and PCS examinations. Remember that in one of the statements. Ecology is, again, he gave this definition or gave this concept, in fact, in 1869, where when you see the word ecology, eco is derived from the word ecos, which means home or estate. Logy means study. So that means you are basically studying about the relationship and the interactions of the living organisms with the surrounding environment in a particular region. So that is why it is ecology. Ernest Haeckel. Clear? Okay, let's move ahead. Now, when we are talking about ecology, over here by default the concept of interaction between the biotic and abiotic component is relevant. As we told about the interaction between the living organisms and with the environment, so living and non-living interaction is also being considered here. Now please remember, over here I have very categorically mentioned certain important things. Levels of ecological interaction. Now when I talk about interaction, it can be at various levels, right from an individual or an organism to biosphere. to biosphere. So from an organism to the biosphere, you will realize that this is increasing in the sphere of what study you are doing. Let us see this. Let us see. First of all, when I take at the lowest level, it is organism. Now, organism can be seen as an individual living, a living entity. That is a basic unit of study. Now, when you go ahead further, the word population comes. Now, population includes certain set of individuals who belong to a same species who are able to breed. That is what population is. Always remember. It is a group of individuals. They are of the same species, and along with it, they are capable of breeding. This is a very important characteristic. Whenever we say, let us say, a population of this or that, we are referring to a particular species of which population is being calculated or studied. So population is, whenever we use the word population, it is of a particular species. And if it is of a particular species, the members are able to breed and produce children. Next, above that comes concept of community. Now, the community is basically an assemblage or collection of population of different species that are interacting with each other, right? Now, it is quite possible. Let us take a particular region. Now, over there, you can have humans also, you can have animals also, you can have plants also. They're interacting with each other through various manners, depending on each other also for various resources and needs. So, that case, you will say it is a community. Next comes, this is with respect to environment, right? Ecosystem. Now, ecosystem is a functional unit of nature where the biotic and abiotic components interact through energy and nutrient cycles. So, we'll study this in detail also. It is a functional unit, very important, focusing on the biotic and abiotic interactions. And again, there is transfer and movement of energy and as well as the nutrients over here. Then comes the landscape. The landscape is a heterogeneous area. Heterogeneous area basically means that it is not something uniform. There is a lot of variation that are present. Composed of mosaic of interacting ecosystems. So over here, if you realize, this was ecosystem. Landscape has various ecosystems which are interacting with each other. That is what is landscape. When you come or talk about biome, which is above landscape, it is a large regional ecosystem with a specific climate and vegetation and fauna, like the tundra. We had studied about them in the climate. Similarly, with every climatic classification, you have a vegetation associated with it. So you have tundra, taiga, tropical rainforest region. So those are again can be categorized into the biomes. Why? Because they have a specific climate and they have a specific vegetation along with it, right? Then is the biosphere. It is a global sum of all the ecosystem that are present, right? All the ecosystem that are present. So that is the sum up of it. Now, this is again the various levels. You can be asked questions with respect to, let us say they'll ask population and they will say population means a group of people of different species staying together. No, it is community. So you should be well aware of the definition that I've written over here because this is something that is very often neglected by the candidates, and what happens is ultimately in examination you suffer. So you should be very clear. You can please note it down also. As you move higher, the complexity is increasing because individual, simple, so many multiple things come, so the complexity increases as you move up, right? Okay, let's move ahead. Now let us understand, we've studied a little bit of ecology. Let us understand what is environment. Now when I talk about environment, environment is everything around an organism that affects its throughout its life. That means if I'm here, everything that is around me, living or non-living, that is impacting me is my environment, right? Whether it is your neighbor, whether it is the climate of that region also that is impacting you. So whether the certain vegetation that is around you is impacting you. So environment basically comes from the word or meaning that is surrounding. And something that is around you, whether it is living or non-living, that is impacting you is your environment. Now, when I talk about this, it includes all the living and non-living things also. So if I see, and the biotic means living. Plants, animals, bacteria, fungi, humans, microorganisms, everything over here are basically referring to the biotic components. Abiotic components, if you realize, sunlight, temperature, heat flow, water, air and atmospheric gases, soil, geological substratum and the landforms that are present here. All of these are part of the non-living component. So you are surrounded by all of these things, biotic or abiotic. Humans, your neighbors, that is also part of your environment. Does it happen that sometimes you are not in good terms with your neighbors? You often say that the environment of this colony has been spoiled because of certain neighbors being very obnoxious in nature or not so well mannered. What does that mean? Because again, you are interacting, you are one or the other way might be interacting with them or not interacting, but they are close to you. So that means they are also creating nuisance. So that is why environment from that perspective can also be seen, right? Ecosystem. Again, when we talk about ecosystem, see, an ecosystem is a functional unit of nature encompassing interaction between the biotic and abiotic components, right? It is a functional unit of nature that basically is encompassing or dealing with the interaction of the biotic and the abiotic components. Now, what are the biotic and abiotic components here? Abiotic components can be categorized into three categories. Physical, that means the aspect related to temperature, humidity, light, atmospheric pressure. Inorganic aspect, water, oxygen, carbon dioxide and nitrogen. Organic, now this one have protein, carbohydrates and lipids. All of them are non-living, right? So over here, these are abiotic components. When I talk about the biotic components, you can have what the life forms that are present here. Let us assume producers in the form of green plants, grasses, trees and all. Consumers who are eating that, let us say various forms of animals, or let us say decomposers like the microorganisms, even let us say the fungi, the bacteria, the worms that are present here. Those can be categorized under the biotic components here. Clear? So we have the abiotic, we have the biotic components. Clear? Let's move ahead. Functions of the ecosystem. Now, whatever words I've mentioned over here is something that will be explained to you, right? Now, energy flow through food chain. Second is nutrient cycle, that is biogeochemical cycle, ecological succession and homeostasis. Please remember, every single word I'm going to explain, like energy flow is mentioned. So similarly, biogeochemical cycle, ecological succession, everything will be explained in the coming parts of this lecture. One thing that you need to know is homeostasis. Homeostasis basically means maintenance of balance. What do you mean by balance? Have you seen that when we talk about landform formations also, you realize that as an outcome of the endogenetic and exogenetic forces that take place? Why? Because it is a balance being maintained. You know that the earth is neither too hot nor too cool when on the surface. Why? Because again, the condition is such that the nature itself has managed in such a way that we are able to survive because of that. It has also got to do with luck that we are on this planet. But again, when we talk about heat budget also, you realize that this is a mechanism of the atmosphere along with the earth to maintain a balance of heat. Yes? So that is again what is known as homeostasis. Do you realize that there is a heat budget of the oceans also, which we had studied in the previous lecture? That is again same thing, again balance being maintained. So what happens is that homeostasis in a whole means balance being maintained, right, through various processes. Coming back, let us through energy flow and all these concepts, let us study now. Energy flow. Energy flow concept will be only complete when you have studied the concept of food chain, food web, the various pyramids of energy flow and all. Only then it will be clear. So let us see, the topic is energy flow. Now under which let us study the various concepts first of all. Whenever I talk about food chain, you know that this is a process of eating and being eaten. How? You know that very well, like there's a, let us say, there's certain grass at some place, right? A plant at certain place. You realize that possibly that grass is being eaten by a small animal. That small animal is being eaten by a bigger animal, and that animal is further eaten by a larger predator. Now, do you realize one is eating another, another is eating another, another is eating another, and there's a chain that is formed. Now, please understand there will be multiple chains that are linking here, but we are talking about just one chain. This is known as a food chain because for this is a food, 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 right? So food chain is a transfer of food energy from the green plants that are producers who are producing it through a series of organisms with repeated eating and being eaten. This is known as food chain. Now I can represent it in the form of a triangle also like this. For example, at the base I can say, let us say, these are the producers, that is the grass. Then I can say there is grasshopper. Then I can say this is a frog. Then I can say this is a snake, and then I can say an eagle. So I can put it in this way also. This, do you realize this is various levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Similarly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are trophic levels. So each step in the food chain is known as a trophic level. So you can represent it in this way also, same thing. And this whole is a food chain that is being represented over here. That is repeated eating and being eaten. Clear? Let's move ahead. Now, this is something very important, a concept that I have written here. Please understand. Gross primary productivity and net primary productivity. I've written a formula also over here. I'll rewrite the formula also, don't worry. Let's see. This has been asked in the civil services examination also. And that is why I'm telling you the concepts that we are doing, those are basic concepts which are indirectly mentioned in the NCERT, and I've expanded them. So that whatever requirement that is left also with respect to the NCERT, you have covered it over here, right? So there's a concept of gross primary productivity. Now what happens is, it refers to the total rate at which the producers means a green plant over here because they're producing their own food, capture the solar energy and store it. So what is the rate over here? That the energy is being captured and is being stored by the plant. Now you know that the amount of energy that is being stored is not the total energy, because there will be certain energy which is being, let us say, which is being captured, is being stored, but out of that which is being stored, you know that some will be utilized for the basic metabolic activities or respiration activities of the plant also. So let us say a plant is being eaten by a person, or let us say an animal of the next trophic level. For him, the complete amount of energy that is being produced or captured by the plant will not be available, because some energy has already been utilized by the plant for its respiration. So what do we see? The remaining energy from the gross primary productivity which has been utilized for respiration. So what do we see? The net primary productivity is equal to gross primary productivity minus energy used for respiration, or slash you can put metabolism also. This is the net primary productivity. Clear? Okay. Let's move ahead. Food chain. We have done food chain. What is food chain? So let us see the types of food chain. The first one which I had given you the example is basically a representation of a grazing food chain. What does you mean by grazing food chain? From the grazing word, you should understand the word green plant. It is a type of food chain that begins with the green plant. So it begins with the green plant as a primary producer, and after that it involves certain herbivores that consume as a primary consumer. So grazing food chain basically uses that the first stage is a green plant which is producing its own food, and later on it is being consumed by some other animal or various resources, and finally the culmination. So when it begins with a green plant, it is known as a grazing food chain, which you had already seen in this diagram also. This is a representation of a grazing food chain. Let's move ahead. Second is aquatic food chain. Whenever I talk about the aquatic food chain, it is, please remember, I'm not simply talking about oceans. It basically refers to a scenario where the process of eaten and being eaten is being carried out, but it is taking place in the aquatic environment. Now, aquatic environment over here does not mean only ocean and sea. It can include ponds also, it can include lakes also, it can include estuaries also. So those which are associated with water. So over here the energy and nutrients are transferred from an organism to another through feeding interactions in aquatic ecosystem. Over here, the aquatic ecosystem basically can be rivers, lakes, ponds, estuaries, oceans, and seas. Now, this is an example of a pond ecosystem where the primary producer is being algae over here, which is being eaten, which is being consumed by a small fish. The small fish is being consumed by a frog. Now, the frog is being consumed by a large fish, and a large fish by a heron. So, this is again what? An aquatic food chain. Clear? Let's move ahead. Detritus food chain. Now, this is something very interesting. Why it is interesting? Please see. When I talk about detritus food chain, please see. Detritus basically means that is related to something that is dead, right? So whenever I talk about dead organic matter, we are talking about the word detritus. It can be, let us say, an animal had died now, or let us say the dead leaves are lying on the floor. Now those can be categorized under detritus, or even the fecal remains of the animals can also be categorized under this. So it is known as decomposer food chain that begins with a dead organic matter such as leaf litter, fallen branches, dead animals, or fecal matter. So the interesting thing about this is that it begins with the dead material, and then it is being consumed by what? The worms, which make it further simplified. They get their nutrition from them. Then these beetle are consuming the worms, and the beetle is being consumed by the bird. So the beginning, if it is with a dead organic matter, then you are basically talking about a detritus food chain. Clear? Okay, let's move ahead. Now comes the food web. Now see, till now you have seen various food chains. Now the food chain is not an isolated event. There might be various food chains which are linked to each other. Now let us assume, if I have mentioned here worm, it is not only being eaten by beetle, it might be eaten by some other organism also. So that means there will be various food chains which are linking each other. So these linking of the various food chains basically lead to a web-like structure which is known as a food web. It refers to the complex network of feeding relationships among various organisms in an ecosystem depicting multiple interconnected food chains. Multiple interconnected food chains. Clear? So, what can I say in simple words? Linkage of the various food chains basically lead to a web-like structure which is known as a food web. Simple. Clear? Okay. Now comes the concept of ecological pyramid. Again, we are talking about the energy flow only. All these things are under that. See, in the previous topic when we were doing the food chain, I had very well told you that I could represent those food chains in the form of a pyramid also. Like producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. So it depends upon what is the length of the food chain. Now, you will realize this, that over here, I have converted that in this form of a triangle, right? Now, when I represent in the form of a triangle, we can associate it with like a pyramid-like structure, right? So see here, ecological pyramid is a trophic pyramid. Trophic means the various levels that are present over here. It is a geographical representation of the trophic structure and energy flow within an ecosystem. So within an ecosystem, who is eating what is being eaten, what is being consumed, how the energy is being transferred is being basically studied through this. Like it was being studied over here. So similarly, in this manner also we are studying it. It illustrates the distribution of biomes, energy, and the number of organisms with the different trophic levels. So you will understand this, that through these pyramids, we will get to know at which level the number of organisms are more. What is the energy being transferred? As we move ahead in this particular topic, you will get to know about these things. So you get to know about the animals through the biomes also. If there is a particular biome, you know that these types of organisms will be present there, right? So a lot of information is conveyed through this. We'll study this. Now see. First is, like I said, the number you mentioned. How do we get to know about the number? There's a concept under this first is pyramid of number. Pyramid of number. What is pyramid of number? Analyze. Now understand this. It is a graphical representation of the number of organisms at each trophic level. This is something very important. Number of organisms at each trophic level. Now, this is a pyramid again. I can make it in this way also, so there is no issue. I made it like this. In this is relatively very broad. So that means the number of organisms, that means the number of phytoplanktons in numerical number or counting are much more than the large fish. Yes or no? If I am taking certain coastal ecosystem or region and I'm studying that, so do you realize when I'm studying that the number of phytoplanktons that are present, if I count them, are going to be much larger than the large fish that is present in that region? You will say yes. So over here, pyramid of number, we are counting the number of organisms at each trophic level. So over here, the phytoplankton number is very huge. So broad. If you go above, zooplankton, they are lesser in comparison to phytoplankton, so lesser number. Small fish, relatively lesser number. Large fish, even less. So you will see a pyramid which is in this form. You can see this also, and there can be an opposite direction also, which we will see. Just a representation I'm done. Now see here, when I'm saying pyramid of number basically represent at which trophic level how many number of organisms are present there, right? Now this can be of various types. First is the upright. Upright, in a way, this particular structure that I've explained you is an example of grassland ecosystem which we had just studied. Over here, the number of organisms decreases from the lower to the higher trophic level. So as you move in the higher trophic level, the number of organisms will decrease. So this is known as an upright pyramid. So pyramid of number can be upright and pyramid of number can be reverse also. Like this over here, see. inverted pyramid. Now see, here the number of organisms increase as you move higher in the trophic level. As you move higher in the trophic level, the number of organisms will increase. Now see the example. There is an example of parasitic food chain. What happens is, over here the oak tree is a producer for them, and there are various birds over here which are consuming some aspects from the oak tree. Then there are lice and bugs that are present here, and then there are bacteria also feeding on them. So this is a concept which you realize that this is reverse in nature. Right from producer to this, you see the number of oak tree is going to be, let us say, 1, but there's so many birds on that, there's so many lice and bugs and much more number in bacteria. So as you move higher, you realize there is number is increasing. When you make a pyramid, it is like an inverted pyramid. Can you make it like this? Like, see, it is like an inverted pyramid. So we are seeing over here that a number of pyramid of number can be reverse also depending upon the ecosystem. Third is irregular or spindle shaped. Now irregular or spindle shaped means that it does not follow any rule with respect to whether it is completely reverse or upright. It can be of any shape. Now see here. Here the pyramid number may not follow strict pyramidal shape. Example, tree ecosystem. Let us see. Producer are the trees. Above that you have the birds. You have certain animals like deers and all. Over there you have wolves and then lion. Now over here you realize there are trees are lesser in number, birds and all are more in number, then you have wolves and then you have lions. So that means this is not a pyramid shape also. It is again like a spindle shaped or an irregular shape. So that means, what do you understand by this is that the pyramid of number can be upright, the pyramid of number can be reverse, the pyramid of number can be irregular shaped also. Irregular shape means that there is no specific shape. Clear? Okay, next. Pyramid of biomass. Now please remember, first was a pyramid of number where in the concept of number I was counting the number of organisms at each trophic level. Now over here I am going to weigh them. Weigh them. That is very, very important here. So pyramid of biomass is a graphical representation that shows a relationship between the biomes, that is biomass, that is the total dry weight of an organism at different trophic levels within an ecosystem. Now please remember, it is measured in grams per meter square. That means amount of weight per meter square. So you're basically measuring the weight, not the number here. So in this method, the individual is at each trophic level is weighed instead of being counted. Instead of being counted, it is being weighed. That is very, very important here. So types, you can have an upright pyramid also. Let us say the plants in a, let us say take a region over there. Let us say you have plants also, deer also, cheetah also. Now if I take the biomass, that is the weight of the plants, total weight of the plants of that region, you will realize those total collection of the plants together will weigh much more than the cheetah, because cheetahs are not going to be in large number, because we are not talking about the number, we are talking whatever the cheetahs present. So their weight is going to be lesser per meter square, but plants is going to be more, deer is going to be between them. So you will realize that over here the biomass is more, less and lesser. So it is an upright position also. It can be inverted also, like phytoplankton, zooplankton, small fish, large fish. The large fish, the biomass is larger. Phytoplankton, because they're already very less in weight, very negligible weight. So overall the biomass contribution is relatively less. So it will be inverted in nature. So pyramid of number can be again similarly as we have already discussed, pyramid of number can be inverted. It can be upright, it can be spindle shaped. The pyramid of biomass can also be upright and inverted, that is reversed. Now comes the third pyramid, which is pyramid of energy. Now pyramid of energy is something that you should always remember. It is always upright. There is no other shape. It is always upright. Why? We'll understand that. See, it indicates how much energy is required in the next trophic level. How much energy is required in the next trophic level? You know that very well. See, for this concept to be understood, there is a law that you should be knowing. Only then you can understand that. There is a very popular law that is known as Lindemann's 10% law. What is the name? Lindemann's 10% law. Lindemann's 10% law basically states that only about 10% of the energy available at one trophic level is transferred to the next trophic level in an ecosystem. It means that you know that if there is certain amount of energy in this trophic level, it will be consumed by the upper trophic level, but the amount of energy that is transferred is only going to be 10% of the energy that is available here. That is why as you move up in the trophic level, you know that the energy will be becoming less, that less available energy will be there. So that is why it is always upright. Supposingly 100 units or 100% energy is here, you move ahead 10%, move ahead up 1%, up 0.1%. That is why please remember, you cannot have multiple layers or levels in a food chain, because over there then the amount of energy that is available in the top layer will become less and it will become unsustainable. This is one of the questions which has been asked in the prelims examination also. That was conceptual and you should be knowing it, because the number of levels increase, the amount of energy that is reaching the top layer will be less as per the Lindemann's 10% law. That is why generally 4 to 5 layers are maximum that you generally study or see. Clear? Okay. Now comes the second point which we had studied in the functions, biogeochemical cycle. Now this is again very important topic, and this is something that you should always be, it is very clearly mentioned in the NCERT also. So I have expanded that concept to study it even more in more detail. See, biogeochemical cycle. Over here, when we talk about biogeochemical cycle, it revolves around the movement and transformation of essential elements and compounds between the living organisms, environment, and the geological processes. Let's take an example. Let us take the example of carbon. Now you know that our body has carbon. You know that there are all the metals along with other lot of metals, there is a lot of carbon also present around me in form of so many compounds. You know that every living organism has carbon. You know that carbon compounds are present in the crust also. You know carbon is present in the landscapes also. Carbon is also present in the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide and other compounds also. Yes, carbon is dissolved in form present in the oceans also. And you realize that there is a transfer or movement that is continuously taking place among these various bodies or reservoirs. Reservoirs means a place where a certain element of mineral is stored. Like my body is also a reservoir of carbon. An ocean is also a reservoir. Atmosphere is also a reservoir. And from between these reservoirs, there is an interaction or changes taking place. How? Let us assume. Now, I am inhaling oxygen, but I'm exhaling carbon dioxide. So from a reservoir that is my body, I am adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Yes or no? Yes, I am. Now there is a log of wood that is present here and I burn it. Now carbon is in a stored format in that way in a wood. That is why it is also again a carbon sink. Now when I burn it through the process of combustion, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide gases will be released. That means from a reservoir of being a wood, it is being released into the atmosphere. So again, these processes are taking place. Now, please remember this. So these are the various phenomena what you study in the biogeochemical cycle, where the movement and transformation of these elements or compounds is taking place between living organisms, between the environment through the various geological processes. Clear? Now see, it involves circulation of elements such as carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, water through various reservoirs like atmosphere, oceans, soil, living organisms. Now, when I talk about biogeochemical cycle, it basically is an interconnectedness or a relationship between or among, let us say, biological, geological, and the various chemical processes involved in the cycle. Now, let us understand, when I'm talking about biogeochemical cycle, there are a lot of components also, and what are the various cycles we are going to study? Let me show you that also first. We'll study the gaseous cycles, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and we'll study the sedimentary cycles also, phosphorus and sulfur. These are very important. The questions have been asked on them also, right? So we'll study them. Even the question was asked that which among the following are the sedimentary cycles? They had put carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus and sulfur. So only phosphorus and sulfur were there. So this has been asked in multiple times in the PCS exams and even in the UPSC exam also. Okay. So let us see what are the components of a biogeographical cycle, biogeochemical cycle. Let's see. First is reservoir or pool. Reservoir or pool is a particular place where a particular element or compound is stored. As I said, my body is also a reservoir. An ocean is also a reservoir that is storing some element or a compound. Atmosphere is also a reservoir because it is storing some amount of element or compound, let us say carbon, nitrogen, whatever be the case. Even for that matter, vegetation also. So where there is stored for a good amount of time, then it is known as a reservoir. Pathways of fluxes, movement of elements or compounds between different reservoirs. As I said, a tree is there which is itself a storehouse of carbon. Now, if somebody cuts the tree and burns that tree, you are releasing that carbon compound in the air. So, from one reservoir that is of a tree or the vegetation, you are releasing it into another storehouse that is the atmosphere. So, you are making or exchanging taking place between two reservoirs. So, that is known as a pathway. Exchange processes. The processes which facilitate the transfer of elements or compounds between reservoirs. Let us say I had burned a wood. What is that? Combustion. Now, the combustion is a process through which I have changed the one reservoir to another reservoir. So, that is the process. Next is geochemical cycles. Now, within this process, you realize that various processes which you've already studied in the landscape formation also, weathering, erosion, sedimentation and all also play a very important role in changing the reservoirs from one place to another, also changing its form also. Last is anthropogenic influences. For example, I said burning of the wood. A simple example that is done intentionally by human being. So what human beings or what type of disturbances they are creating are also part of it. Let us say you have now a lot of vehicles. Earlier on, vehicles used to produce a lot of pollution. You are adding those pollution to the atmosphere. Now EV is coming. Now EV is reducing the pollution also. So what we are trying to understand is that human intervention also playing a very important role with respect to one reservoir to different other reservoir and the processes involved in between them. So these are the various components which you should be understanding and knowing. Now comes the next part, which is the types of the biogeochemical cycle. There are two categorizations. First is the gaseous cycle. Gaseous cycle has a carbon, nitrogen and oxygen cycle, and the sedimentary has phosphorus as well as the sulfur cycle. So let us study one by one. Please see here. First is a carbon cycle. Now please understand the introduction almost remains the same for everything, but what major important thing is when I talk about carbon cycle, it basically means how carbon is basically moving from one reservoir to another, right? That is the main thing. So carbon cycle is a complex biogeochemical process that involves the movement of carbon among the various reservoirs in the earth from atmosphere, biosphere and hydrosphere. So whatever is the concept, similar things are going to happen for the other cycles also, right? How nitrogen is moving, how oxygen is moving. Let us see. I'd already mentioned what is a reservoir. I'd already mentioned what are the flow processes. So you don't need to explain that. So what is relevant in this particular dimension? See, when I talk about reservoir, atmosphere is also a reservoir. You've seen that. So it contains carbon dioxide and methane. Again, carbon, both of them. Terrestrial biosphere, plants, soil and organisms like we are also reservoirs. So we also store it. Ocean has dissolved carbon as well as carbon dioxide. Geosphere, carbon stored in rocks, sediments and fossils. So these are all what reservoirs for carbon. This can be asked in your papers also. Which among the following are basically representation of the reservoirs of carbon? Flow processes. Now, if you see photosynthesis, now in which carbon dioxide is converted to organic carbon. Change of state or change of reservoir. This is in the plant. Now, this was in the air. Respiration, release of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Decomposition, breakdown of some, let us say, the dead organic matter and through which, let us say, carbon dioxide or carbon gases are released. Combustion, burning of the fossil fuel through which, let us say, gases of like carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide are also released. Weathering, this is a physical and chemical weathering of the rocks through which you know that there can be release of the stored carbon that is released from the rocks. So that is also again under the dimension of weathering, right? Now let's see. Exchanges. You've already seen the exchanges that are taking place among the various parts. Atmosphere, biosphere exchange. How is the atmosphere, biosphere exchange taking place? Through photosynthesis and respiration. Atmosphere, ocean exchange. How it is taking place? Through photosynthesis and ocean outgassing. Ocean outgassing basically means the release of gases from the ocean when it is saturated. Biosphere, geosphere is a exchange. Decomposition and through nutrient cycling. Geosphere, atmosphere exchange through volcanic eruption or let us say carbonation also, this can happen. Next comes the nitrogen cycle. Now, nitrogen cycle, exactly the same thing. How the transfer of nitrogen is taking place from one reservoir to the another, right? That's exactly the same thing. So let us see. Reservoir, atmosphere, 78% is of the atmosphere is again nitrogen. Soil, abundant nitrogen compounds are present in the soil. Living organism, essential for proteins and nucleic acid. You know that the basic building block of life is amino acid, and amino acid itself has protein, and protein itself is a composed of nitrogen. So nitrogen is very critical. Ocean, it has dissolved organic and inorganic nitrogen that is present. Now please remember this. There are certain points which I'm going to mention here. Please understand them very well. Over here, these concepts which I'm going to explain to you, nitrogen fixation, nitrification, assimilation, ammonification, denitrification, all these concepts are very, very important for your examination, particularly your prelim examination. Because in the prelims, they will ask you, okay, which among the following, let us say, write a statement. They'll write a statement and they say which among the following is correct. Whether it is nitrogen fixation, whether it is nitrification, assimilation, all, and you'll get confused. So let us very categorically understand how this nitrogen is moving from the atmosphere to the soil, from dead organism to the soil, and then released in the atmosphere and all. So these are various processes. Let us see them. First, flow processes. What is nitrogen fixation? Please see, the nitrogen gas in the atmosphere is converted to ammonia or ammonium ion, NH4 positive, by nitrogen fixation bacteria, which possesses an enzyme which is known as nitrogenase, which basically helps it in this conversion. So what is the nitrogen fixation? Please understand, what is nitrogen fixation? Over here, the nitrogen that is available in the atmosphere is basically converted to ammonia or ammonium ion by the nitrogen fixation bacteria, which has a enzyme which is known as nitrogenase, which helps it to convert it. This is known as nitrogen fixation. Clear? Nitrogen fixation first. Second thing that happens is nitrification. What is it? Nitrification. What is nitrification? The ammonium ion which was created in the previous phase, that is nitrogen fixation, that ammonium ion produced by the nitrogen fixation or released from the organic matter are converted to nitrate ion. So, important thing is that the ammonium ion over here is converted to nitrate ion through the oxidation reactions carried by the nitrifying bacteria. So nitrification involves conversion of the ammonium ion to the nitrate ion. By what? The nitrifying bacteria. Third point, assimilation. Plants and other organisms take up the nitrate and ammonium ion from the soil or water and incorporate nitrogen into organic molecule like protein. So this is then observed by the plants and other organisms, and then used for its growth and development, right? This is how assimilation takes place. Clear? Now, next is ammonification. Now, this is again a reverse process is taking place. See. Organic nitrogen compounds like protein from dead plants. Now, if let us say a dead plant or animal is there, so the reverse process will take place. Over here, the nitrogen compound, that is protein that is present in the dead plant or animal, is converted to ammonium ion by decomposer organisms like the bacteria and fungi. Now, please understand what is happening under ammonification. Now, supposing the plant is dead or a dead animal is there, it already has a lot of proteins. Nitrogen compounds are present. So, ammonification basically means that there is conversion of the protein into ammonium ions through the decomposer organisms like, let us say, bacteria and fungi. So again, this, please remember, when we were talking about the ammonium ions being present through the process of nitrogen fixation, we should also know that ammonification also provides nitrogen ion. Clear? But it is from the dead organisms. Last is denitrification. Now over here, what happens, this is again the reverse process of nitrogen fixation. It is a microbial process in which the nitrate is reduced to nitrogen gas or other gases like nitrogen oxide by denitrifying bacteria under anaerobic condition. So again, the reverse process is taking place. So this should be very, very clear to you, these processes. Keep it in mind very clearly and keep it in mind and remember it. Clear? Reduced to nitrogen gas. Obviously then escapes to the atmosphere. Exchanges, you see that soil and plant exchange is taking place. Plant animal exchange, atmosphere soil exchange. So we have already seen through these various processes, these exchanges are taking place. Next comes the oxygen cycle. We very well know that oxygen is present in our bodies. It is present in the atmosphere. It is present in the various landforms. It is present in the crust. It is present in as compounds in various through chemical reactions. It is present everywhere. So this conversion, or let us say from one reservoir to other reservoir, is taking place here also. Let us see here. Reservoir, atmosphere has 21% approximately of the oxygen. Biosphere, it is essential for the biological molecule again. Hydrosphere, because it is a part of the water, right? Lithosphere, it is part of the crust also. These are all reservoirs. What are the flow processes? Again, photosynthesis, through which oxygen is basically added. Respiration, which is basically consuming oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide. Combustion basically involves the oxidation of the organic matter, which basically consumes oxygen because it happens in the presence of oxygen, right? Exchanges, again, atmosphere, biosphere exchange, hydrosphere, lithosphere exchange, and human activities takes place. Second last, these are now the first of the sedimentary cycle. This is not in the gaseous form as such. It is again present in the sediments and all, in various bodies also, but it is not a gas, right? So this is something that you should understand. Now, phosphorus. Now, please remember, when we talk about reservoir, soil, primary in minerals released via weathering and organic matter decomposition, crucial for plant growth. Soil is one of the basic, very important reservoirs of phosphorus. You know that very well in us also, ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Phosphorus again becomes very critical for the protein synthesis, growth of an organism, as well as the plants also. Aquatic, cycles between dissolved form and utilized by aquatic organisms and stored in the sediments, Biota means living organisms, incorporated in the biomolecule, essential for cellular functioning. Sedimentary rocks also you will realize stored as phosphate minerals released through geological processes. Clear? Okay, these are the reservoirs. Processes, weathering, phosphorus-rich rocks, minerals and parent material again through weathering can be broken down. Absorption and uptake, plants absorb phosphorus directly from the soil in the solution form through their roots. Nutrient cycling, phosphorus cycles between biotic and abiotic components of the ecosystem through nutrient cycling paths, through like decomposition and mineralization, which we have just studied. Exchanges, soil plant exchange and aquatic cycling. Sulfur, again, same thing goes for sulfur also. Again, it is sedimentary cycle. Let's see. Atmosphere contains sulfur components. You know that during the volcanic eruptions also hydrogen sulfide is also released. So sulfur is again present through that form also. Sulfur dioxide is also present. So over here you realize that undergo chemical transformation and transport. Soil present in organic matter and minerals. Aquatic environment also it is present. Dissolved form. Biota, again, you know it is important for protein synthesis, energy metabolism also. Flow processes, volcanic eruptions release sulfur gases. Biological processes, if you realize, sulfate reduction, sulfate oxidation and organic sulfur metabolism, it is required. Exchanges, atmospheric deposition and sulfate uptake through plants and microorganisms can also take place. So these are some of the forms which you should have a brief idea about. You do not have to go into R&D. It was mentioned in the NCERT, so I've expanded that. Ecological succession, the next part which we had to study. Please understand something. When we talk about the next topic, this is ecological succession. Here we have now completed with the cycles, right? Now let us come to the next point, that is ecological succession. There are two scenarios in which we basically study this. Supposing there is a bare rock, nothing was there earlier, no vegetation was present there, bare rock is present. Slowly you realize that there are certain changes that take place and you realize some, let us say, lichens basically come. Now lichens basically produce some chemicals also which help in the formation of soil. Then later on you see mosses are there, then you see grasses come, grasses after that you see some shrubs coming, then small trees and huge trees. So you realize that this is a sequential change of the vegetation that is taking place from a point where there was nothing. This is known as succession, but primary succession. If supposingly there is destruction of this type of forest and there is forest fire, and again there is succession taking place, but initially there was something present before, though it has been destroyed. When there is nothing, then it is primary succession, but there was something present in the form of vegetation, then again the start of the succession takes place, then it is known as the secondary succession. Then it is known as the secondary succession. Please note it down. Clear? Now see. Let us read ecological succession. It refers to the gradual and predictable processes of change in the species composition and structure of an ecosystem over the time. So the species are changing, the structure is also changing over the time. They are primary and secondary. Let us see what is primary. You've already seen that it basically occurs in the areas where there was no soil or living organism. Over here in the primary succession, please understand, there is no soil or no living organism is present. And it is just the start. So over there, initially you realize that some species will be there, like in the forms of particularly the lichens. Those are known as the pioneer species because they are the first ones to come to that place and start with the process. So those are known as pioneer species. It begins with the colonization of like lichens and later on mosses that grow on the bare rocks. Over the time, lichens and all release certain chemicals which help in the formation of the soil also. Then you realize slowly some other form of life will also come up. Over the time, organic matter is accumulated and soil develops. More complex plants will come, like the grasses, shrubs establish, and in the later stages, eventually you'll have trees. Initially, shorter trees and later various other varieties of huge trees also present. Now, please remember, after this process is going on from one stage to another, there is a stage which reaches in which we say that this is like a stage which is stable in condition or stable in nature. That stable condition or state which we study over here is something very important. Why? Because eventually a stable or diverse community is known as climax community. Climax community means that over here various species will be present, but they are in stable condition. Various plants are present, huge trees, few smaller trees, some other creepers that might be present. But this is a stabler condition now. Now this condition is known as a climax community. Clear? So this is primary succession. Secondary succession, please remember, is an outcome where certain thing or something was earlier present, which was later destroyed, let us say due to some disruptions like forest fire, floods or something. And later on you realize again that again the succession starts. So it occurs in the areas where soil and other vegetation remains intact after a disturbance such as forest fire and flood. So it is quite possible that some soil was already present, some vegetation or roots might already be present. So it is easier now for the succession to take place. It begins with the re-establishment. See, it is not establishment, it is re-establishment because earlier the vegetation was present, it was destroyed, and again the process is starting. So it is secondary succession, not the primary succession of the plants and animal communities in the areas which was previously inhabited. This is secondary succession. Okay, now let's move ahead. This is something very important here, please understand. Two concepts which I'm explaining to you here. First is biodiversity, another is biogeography. Biodiversity refers to the vast variety of life found in a particular area encompassing the plants, animals, fungi and other microorganisms. If I take a region or area and see what type of vegetation or plants or animals or microorganisms are present, how diverse are they? That is basically a representation of the biodiversity, right? So what does it mean? The vast variety of life that is found in a particular area encompassing animals and plants, fungi, microorganisms is biodiversity. Now the question comes, and what is biogeography? Biogeography refers to, first of all, a study. It studies basically the distribution of the species and ecosystems across the geographical space and time. This is biogeography. Clear? Okay. Now let us see. When we talk about biodiversity, let's come to biodiversity. When we come to biodiversity, there are three types of biodiversity broadly that we study. One is genetic biodiversity, second is species diversity, and third is ecosystem diversity. Clear? Let us see this. Let us see them. Just quickly note this definition if you want. Quickly note it down. All those who want to note it down, please note it down. Okay, so please note it down also. See why. See, when I talk about biodiversity, let us see this diagram. Can you see these are like small, whatever species they are, like small mouse? Now there are different colors, little bit variation is there. Do you realize they are of a similar species but different variations are there within a species? This is what is genetic diversity. Let's see. When I talk about genetic diversity refers to the variations in genes within a species. Let us say I am Homo sapien, you are also Homo sapien. There are Homo sapiens across the world. You realize there is certain variation in the genes that are present within the Homo sapiens also. So that is what is known as genetic diversity. With respect to, you will see, how do you see these diversities? Some are tall, some are short, some are intelligent, some are less intelligent. Some have a different shade of color, skin color. Some, you can analyze these through even the racial classification that is present. Mongoloids, Negroids, Caucasoids and all, we generally do when we study also. For general studies also, for optionals like geography and optionals like anthropology, we study them. So what are those? Those are basically a representation of the genetic diversity. That means what we say as phenotype, that is a representation of the genotype, that is the genetic composition, is being represented. So that means there is certain variation in the genes also. So this diversity is seen in different genetic compositions that individual pose and which leads to variations in appearance, behavior, and resilience. Next comes the concept of species diversity. Species diversity basically refers to, again, from the concept of genetic diversity, we have come to a broader aspect. It refers to a variety of species within a habitat or a region. Variety of species within a habitat or a particular region. These are of three types: alpha, beta, and gamma diversity. Let us see alpha diversity. Alpha diversity means the species diversity within a single ecosystem or community at a local scale. When we talk about beta diversity, it basically refers to diversity between two different communities or ecosystem. Gamma diversity refers to overall species diversity across multiple ecosystems within a large area. So this is again broader scale as we study, right? Third is ecosystem. Third is ecosystem diversity. It basically is representing or telling about the variations in the large diversity present in a region having various ecosystems. So if you realize there's a large region which has various ecosystems, let us say we can have ecosystem coastal, we can have estuarine, you can have desert, whatever. You can have so many ecosystems there. You will realize that this is a huge region which might have large number of ecosystems. So obviously the diversity is also going to be huge because various species are acclimatized and adapted themselves to each individual ecosystems. Clear? This is the ecosystem diversity. Let's move ahead. Patterns of biodiversity. Now let us see how the pattern of diversity is basically there, how the changes take place. This is a question which has been asked in the civil services also, so it's important. First is latitude. Now see, as one moves away from the equator, the biodiversity decreases. So that means that where there is extreme of temperature in the form of cold, you will realize that the biodiversity is less. So more biodiversity is present close to the equatorial region. So that is why as we move away from the equator, the biodiversity is going to decrease. Altitude. With increase in the altitude, you realize that harshness of the condition of the cold comes in, so the biodiversity will decrease. So with increase in altitude, the biodiversity will decrease. Size of the habitat, if I keep the other factors constant, whenever we are doing this, we are keeping other factors constant because actually in reality, various factors are acting together and the result is very different. So let us take one by one. So we have to keep other factors constant. Size of the habitat. So keeping other factors constant, if you realize the size of the greater the size of the habitat, that means more species can be accommodated there. So the greater the size or the larger the size of the habitat, it will basically means that more number of species can be present there. So greater diversity can be there. Clear? Next come seasons. Now please, season, please remember, is a very subjective topic. For me, an extreme cold is very problematic. But for some other animal who is very comfortable in the cold, it is not a problematic issue. Let us take, if you get the husky dogs which are actually adapted to cold environment, if I get a husky and put them near the equatorial region in some house, they might not survive even 1 week. Yes? So what do you mean? That means when we talk about the species, it is also depending upon the fact that certain climatic conditions are more favorable and others are not. Overall, when we realize that, the warmer season, we see that it is relatively more has a more diversity. So overall, it has to depend upon the favorable conditions. So favorable condition, there is greater diversity. Favorable conditions, more or less over here, means that when it is summertime, relatively more summertime, there is going to be greater diversity. Historical factors. Now, historical factors also can be multiple. Let us, for example, there is a volcanic eruption that has taken place thousands of years ago, and possibly the species that were present in that region have been destroyed. And though, let us assume, though it is near the equatorial region, though let us say the size of the habitat is larger, but because of the historical factor, the species are less. That can be a historical reason, something that has happened in the past. Second thing can be, let us say, colonization. Now, example is like killing of bisons in North America by the Britishers. When the Britishers basically invaded or started capturing the regions, they not only butchered the Native Americans, they also butchered millions of bisons that were present there. For them, it was like a wilderness or a representation of backwardness. So they started killing those bisons. So in a way, they were responsible also for decreasing the indigenous species that were present there. So these are also what historical factors. Last is nature or isolation. Now see, isolation can be one of the reasons for new species being produced, that is known as speciation. But one more thing also should be understood, that it may decrease the genetic diversity also. Yes, because people are now isolated. You are not mating freely with other people. Now you're restricted. So there will be decrease in the genetic diversity during that time. So this is also very critical and important here. Let's move ahead. Functions of biodiversity as mentioned in the year NCERT also. First is ecological function. It helps in the ecological sustainability along with survival of the species. Ecosystem service, that means pollination activities taking place, climatic regulation and nutritional cycle, as we have already done in the biogeochemical cycles. Scientific aspect, research and education and reservoir of genes, because it is a storehouse of the gene pool, that means the genes that are present in a particular ecosystem. Last is, a very important is productive. Why? Because it is providing you with food supply, it is providing you with medicines, it is providing you with the raw material for the industries. So again, from the productive value, it is also very important. So these are the critical points which have been asked in the preliminary examinations repeatedly, right? Okay. Then coming to the next point is biodiversity hotspot. Now you will realize that, so what is this? Please remember, there are certain places which have been facing a lot of problems with respect to their biodiversity. Or let us say they have been, because of the nature, let's see, there are multiple factors that are involved in certain region being declared as a biodiversity hotspot. Like for example, we'll see the criteria. There are a lot of endemic species that are present, and let us say there has been a lot of intervention by the human beings which are destroying that region. So certain regions that are very critical for the environment and biodiversity, and they're being harmed. So they are categorized as the biodiversity hotspots. See here, these are the regions of high level of species richness and endemism that are endemic to that environment, as well as substantial human caused concerns. So along with this, why it is important is, there are richness also in the species, but along with that human beings are intervening in that environment. And that is why it is raising a concern. So what is the criteria for declaring any particular region as a biodiversity hotspot? See, a region must contain at least 1500 species of vascular plants as endemic to that particular region, accounting for more than 0.5% of the world's total. This is one. Second, must have lost at least 70% of the original habitat or retained only 30% or less of the original natural vegetation. So if these two conditions are being met, then you can declare a region as a hotspot, a biodiversity hotspot. In India, you realize there are 4 regions over here you can map: the Western Ghats, the Himalayas, Then you have the Indo-Burma and the Sundaland, a part of it. So these are again can be part of your biodiversity hotspots. What are the measures that are taken? Now please see, I am confining myself to the NCERT only, so I'll be using certain content which is present in the Indian NCERT also, job part, as well as the old NCERT of physical geography and certain other parts. We are not going beyond that because we are doing NCERT. Little bit content has been added to that. Let us see what are the measures that have been taken to protect the biodiversity also. For example, the forest conservation. National Forest Policy 1952, it basically aims, gives certain provisions, bringing 33% of the geographical area under the forest cover, maintaining environmental sustainability. We've already done this in Physical Geography of India also, so I'm repeating it again because it is important for this chapter. Covering the natural heritage, biological diversity and gene pool, checking soil erosion, ensuring the forest cover. Increasing productivity of the forest to make timber, fodder, fuel wood and food available, and creating massive people's movement so that they act like a force towards protection of the forest. This was the earlier policy 1952. Then you have the newer one, that is 1988. The objectives are environment sustainability, conservation of natural heritage, soil and water conservation, meeting the local needs, increase the forest and the tree cover, tribal and forest dwellers welfare. So please remember, it is not only talking about simply the forest, it is giving you a holistic development of a region. Holistic development basically over here means that it is talking not only about the forest, it is talking about how to sustain a region, how to bring about the welfare of the people who are located in that region, like you have seen that they're mentioning about tribal and forest welfare and their welfare. So this is again very, very important. It is also talking about meeting the local needs. That means the voice of the local should also be adhered to and met. What are the key features and the provisions that are present with respect to this particular policy of 1988? It says first, emphasis on the joint forest management, JFM. That means the local communities to local community interaction, people interacting with the government over here as joint forces, and so that they can basically help in the protection of the forest. Maintain the forest cover at 33%, that means 60% of the hills and at least 20% in the plains. Diversion of forest land is restricted, but if there is diversion, then you need to have compensatory afforestation. Compensatory afforestation basically means that if you are cutting trees in certain region, you need to compensate that by planting forest or trees in some other region. This is known as compensatory afforestation, which is mentioned over here. Next is industrial needs. Now they're saying that the industries who needs the timber and the food, timber, or let us say the wood for their use, they need to have their own plantation of the trees and use that rather than cutting the forest. Next is wildlife conservation. Protection of the forest ecosystem and corridors are important for biodiversity. Clear? Now this is one question in front of you. I would request you to please answer them. Which forest policy first talked about the 33% cover as an important for sustainability? Forest policy of 1894, 1952, 1988, or the Forest Rights Act of 2006? This is question number 1. Please mention them in the comment section below. Social forestry also. These are also measures to protect the biodiversity. This is again mentioned in your NCERT. Social forestry means the management and protection of the forest. Need to manage and protect the forest along with the afforestation to plant more trees on barren land with a purpose of helping the environment, social and rural development. So overall, this is the social forestry. Now these are of 3 types. First is urban forestry, second is rural forestry, and third is a farm forestry. Rural forestry is further divided into subcategories. We'll see them also. Urban forestry, that means raising and management of the trees on the public land as well as a private land. See, public land as well as a private land, this can be asked. They can ask you that, okay, the urban forestry deals with planting only in the public land. You will say, yeah, that is fine. If they mention it can be used in private land, you will say, no, how can someone plant in the private land? It is mentioned here. So you can plant, right? Owned land in and around the urban centers. Obviously, you have to take permission for that. You cannot go to someone's house and just force them to plant a tree. You cannot do that, but obviously with consensus. So that means you can have the plantation taking place or planting of the trees taking place at the private property as well as a public land, right? This is urban forestry. Rural forestry, basically, it emphasizes on promotion of agroforestry and community forestry. What are these? We'll be seeing in the next slide, so don't worry. Farm forestry grows trees for the commercial and non-commercial purposes, right? Now let us come back. We have done urban forestry, we have done farm forestry, we have done rural forestry. Rural forestry has 2 types. First is agroforestry. It combines forestry with agriculture. And community forestry, it is raising of trees on public or community land. So this is again that was basically mentioned in your NCERT, also very critical, very important for your examination with respect to biodiversity. Wildlife conservation, you know that Wildlife Conservation Act is 1972, which was amended in 1991, which was made further stringent, serves as a primary legal framework for wildlife conservation and protection. Now, it provides two major objectives. This has also been asked in the examination. First is safeguarding the endangered species which are listed in the Act. And second, providing legal support to conservation areas of the country like national park, closed areas, and the sanctuaries. These are two major objectives. Now you realize that this act was passed in 1972, but it was amended in 1991. Through these measures, basically the provisions have been made more stringent. The punishment has also been more stringent. So in order to make it make sure that the provisions of them are basically implemented on the ground level. Okay, let's move ahead. Biosphere Reserve. Now, Biosphere Reserve is a very unique and a representative ecosystem of terrestrial and coastal areas, which is institutionally recognized by a program of UNESCO, which is known as Man and Biosphere Program, which we have already done this also. Now, it has three objectives. First is conservation, that is conservation of the biodiversity in the ecosystem which is lying within the Biosphere Reserve. Second is logistics. That means it is basically an international effort of the various bodies that are associated with it. That means international network and more research and monitoring can be done. That means international collaboration over here, logistics means. Next is development. That means we need to associate and have a balanced development as well as protection and conservation. That is again development here. Now, if you see, there are three zones of the Biosphere Reserve. If a Biosphere Reserve is again divided into three zones, the inner is a core zone, which is a very protected zone. This is the most protected zone. Over here, free from human interference. And over here, you realize there are a lot of animals and plants which are endemic in nature are found here. When you move in the outer zone, outside the core zone, you have the buffer zone. This is a zone which is between the two zones. That is the middle zone. Its activities are managed in this area in such a way that it provides support to the core zone. That is why you realize over here some types of activities like tourism, research, fishing, grazing and all is to a certain extent allowed. When you move out, this is known as a transition zone. Over here again, this is the outermost zone, and over here most of the activities are allowed here. So this is like a transitional areas, transitional zones over here, so that this is the region which is most protected, right? So this is what is the Biosphere Reserve. These are some Biosphere Reserves of India that you should be aware of. Cold deserts in Himachal Pradesh, Nanda Devi, Uttarakhand, Kanchenjunga, Sikkim, Dihang Dibang, Andhra Pradesh, Devru Saikhowa, Assam, Manas, Assam, Nokrek, Meghalaya, Sundarban, West Bengal, Simlipai, Odisha, Achanakara, Amarkantak in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Seychelles in Andhra Pradesh, Great Nicobar, Gulf of Mannar. Then you have Agastamalai, Kerala plus Tamil Nadu. Then you have Nilgiris in Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Karnataka, Panchmari in Madhya Pradesh, Rann of Kutch in Gujarat, and Panna in Madhya Pradesh. So these are the biosphere reserves that are found in India. So this was the chapter. Now please remember, we have come to the end of the physical geography series that we were doing. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. Hopefully you have covered a lot of things. We will be coming up with initiatives further to enhance the geographical acumen of you, further give you the best of the content, further give you all the weapons that are required to counter any question that comes in your prelims or the mains examination. If you like the lecture, you can let me know in the comment section, and that is also a means of our motivation. When you comment, you tell us whether it is something positive, whether it is constructive criticism, please let us know. It was a wonderful journey with you, and hopefully we'll be coming with such initiatives to further enhance your knowledge with respect to various other dimensions of geography and environment. Take care, and at last I would always say, Jai Hind.